Welcome to the Habits of the Few, where we discuss habits, rituals, and mindset tactics that you can use to reach your version of success. And now, here's your host, Mo Nabulsi.
Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Habits of the Few. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today's guest is someone I hold dear, someone that I look up to very, very much. Dr. Sam Daher is a certified orthodontist specializing in orthodontics. His initial degree in general dentistry gave him the foundation to create OrthoStyle, which combines orthodontic treatments with preventative and maintenance models. Dr. Daher puts an emphasis on healthy teeth, encouraging his patients to nurture proper oral health and care habits. He earned his Doctor of Dentistry degree from McGill University, and then a specialty degree in orthodontics from the University of Montreal. When he is not with his patients, Dr. Daher is a keynote speaker for Align Technology, the makers of Invisalign Invisible Aligners. He also is bilingual. He speaks English, French, and Arabic fluently. In his spare time, he enjoys golf, traveling, weight training, and spending time with his family. This man has achieved things in life that we all can aspire to achieve. And he has done it in such an eloquent, such a motivational, inspiring way that this podcast encompasses all of that. I urge you to please listen through the entire episode, take some notes down, and pay attention. Guys, please help me welcome Dr. Sam Daher.
What we like to talk about on this podcast are the habits of the successful, the people that have achieved a well-balanced life, both in body, business, being, and in relationships. And one of the cornerstones for me that has elevated in life has been creating and solidifying a routine of habits and in a very formulaic mindset. So if we can kind of just get a brief story about you, where you were to where you are today, how did you get there, why you chose a particular profession, and where do you see yourself in the next 10 years? I think that would be a great way to kind of showcase the people, the attributes and the success that you've built along the way, and what it took you to get there.
Well, this is a great topic to begin with. It's a secret that sort of the secret sauce that everybody looks for, but it does take a lot of work. It doesn't necessarily take hard work alone. It takes discipline. It takes a lot of planning as well. So nothing happens overnight, and nothing happens out of nothing. Where I'm an orthodontist today by trade. My training is. I went through dental school in Montreal. I became a dentist, practiced as a general dentist, enjoyed it until I didn't anymore. So 4 or 5 years into it, I decided I wanted to become an orthodontist, which is basically a dentist specialist that focuses on straightening teeth. So I actually sold my house, sold my practice, and I had absolutely no income for 3 years. And that takes a lot of dedication, and that's not easy. Let me tell you, on the finances, when you have young kids and a wife, so a wife that doesn't work outside the house. So I sold everything, went back to school. That was my passion, and that's what I wanted. 3 years, I already had a doctorate degree. So at that point, when I got my specialty, I got a master's degree and a specialty in orthodontics. When I was done, I decided to relocate. Instead of going back to Montreal, I decided to move to the West Coast, Vancouver, Canada, which is a 5-hour flight and far away from family and support and everything that comes along with family. And that by itself was a tough decision because you want to be close to family. You have your own support system. You have your own sort of habits. And the kids, you're taking the kids away from their cousins, from their grandparents, what have you. So that decision by itself was tough. But dedication and determination is what really drove me. I found an amazing opportunity that I saw as a potential stepping stone into what I want in life. So I enjoyed dentistry in general. It was nice to work with my own hands. I like the craft I got accepted into medical school. And when I was younger, I thought I wanted to be a medical doctor. And when I applied to dental school, just to take a step back, I also got accepted into dentistry. And a week before school started, I switched and decided to go into dental school for the simple reason that I wanted to see the fruit of my labor, actually work with my hands and see the end result myself. So going ortho school was a step further as well. Straightening teeth is a bit of an art and a bit of a science as well. So I enjoyed that and I excelled at that. And I had a partner that I practiced with, and I saw the potential. I saw the absolute potential with orthodontics. And at the time, there was a new company that was just on the horizon that was called Align Technology, which is the maker of a product called Invisalign, which today everybody knows. But back then, it was an obscure little company that very few people knew about. So when I took the course, the certification course, and I realized the potential back then, way before the company itself recognized the potential. And it's a 3-dimensional model. And somehow I got into it and I could visualize a 3-dimensional model. So I put a lot of time and effort into it. And I started treating people, straightening people's teeth without braces using Invisalign when it was primitive back then, almost 2 decades ago. At that point, my practice started growing and people started coming to me, and the image became bigger than the person. So people would refer each other and tell each other about this doctor down in Vancouver that does, this orthodontist that does treat people with Invisalign without braces. And one thing led to another. We treated a few Hollywood celebrities along the way, and those Hollywood celebrities referred other celebrities because the flight from LA to Vancouver is a direct 2.5-hour flight. And one thing led to another. And next thing you know, I get tapped on the shoulder and get a letter from the CEO of Align Technology congratulating me in 2009 on being officially the biggest Invisalign provider in the world. And I remained the biggest Invisalign provider in the world from 2009 to 2011. And today I remain one of the top 5 single providers in the world. And you have to keep in mind that Vancouver, Canada is a small city, 1.5 million. You'd figure the biggest provider would be somewhere in New York or Los Angeles or London or Paris or a place like that. But just, the little story of the little train, the little engine that could almost. And that managed, and like I said, the image grew bigger and bigger, and the company asked me to travel the world and share my experience with my colleague, help him develop the product as well. And I was part of the beta doctors that tested the new products and gave in some ideas along the way to make the product better as well. So I'm proud of that accomplishment. But along the way, it's a trip, and then I'm still on that trip. So the destination wasn't really, I know it sounds like a cliche, the destination was not the goal. I never meant to be the biggest Invisalign provider. I just dug in head first. I liked the 3-dimensional challenge. It sunk in, it set in, and I enjoyed it. And my job was to do the best, basically provide the best treatment that I can ever provide. And next thing you know, one thing leads to another. But my goal was never to be the biggest provider. It just so happened out of hard work and passion. But I used to spend a lot of time at the office. Our job as orthodontists to work from 8 to 5. And then 5 o'clock comes and I call my wife and say, I'll be a couple of hours late, almost on a daily basis, early on. And at that point, what I'll do is I'll stay behind, analyze the results that I've gotten, what went right and what went wrong, and look at, and I started putting a system in place whereby I'll take pictures, I'll take photos of the teeth and compare the results with what was planned and what we were getting clinically, and then work on it, make notes, make adjustment, and the next day sort of make modifications to make it better. It's a long process, but after a couple of years of putting in 10, 12-hour days, I was able to figure out the intricacy and come up with my own system, with my own way of thinking. Keep in mind, this is something that was a new technology, and there was no textbook anywhere in the world about how to use it, sort of how to implement it. So I had to fly by the seat of my pants, obviously, and I have to keep in mind, as a doctor, I can do no harm. So I have to improve it, make it better, or at least don't make it worse to my patients. And ultimately what happened is that paid off. And the results that you see today, I'm proud of the contribution that I applied along with many of my colleagues along the way. But I was one of the early adopters of this technology called Invisalign that is well known internationally today.
That's one heck of a story. Wow. I didn't even know all of that.
That's all right. It's these are professional accomplishment that I'm so proud of. But on the other hand, you sort of have to balance between showing off your accomplishment and bragging. So you sort of tip on the conservative side when you're not sure, and you try to keep it to yourself rather than just appear like, because this is nothing is worse than, you should show your accomplishment, but nothing worse than bragging, because I think bragging sometimes can take a negative connotation.
Well, of course, but there's the humility is one of those things that you just can't fake. At least I don't believe that. And so, there are people that, that tend to exceed that. But I think the way that you put it so eloquently really describes your journey and how difficult it was. Let me ask you, I kind of want to go back a little bit. During those 3 years where you didn't have any income coming in and you were just working like a dog and you were studying, and your family were you still living at home during that time? Were you out of state?
No,
what was that dynamic? What were the things that were going through you that kept fueling you during this 3 years that took you to that next step?
Well, you put your fingers on it. Those 3 years were the toughest 3 years, I have to tell you. It's in hindsight, I didn't know how tough those 3 years were going to be, to tell you the truth. I knew it would be tough, but it's kind of hard when you graduate, you're already a doctor, have a nice German car and a big house with a pool, and then you sell it all, go back to school and literally live like a student when you have 2 young children at home and a wife that looks up to you to support the family. So when I sold my practice and I sold my car, I still had a lot of debt, but whatever was left over was just barely enough to make us go through years 1 and 2. I actually had no income for year 3, but I figured, one step at a time. So for year 1 and year 2, we had to go through it. And I should add that one of the criteria of the graduate program was that I was not allowed to work. In other words, it's a full-time 36 months program to get your master's degree and your specialty, and you're not allowed to work. So by the middle of second, because they want you to focus during the interview process, they actually want to make sure you have enough funds to support you and your family throughout the 3-year program. And I told them I did, and I didn't lie. I sort of bent the truth a little bit because I did have enough funds for 2 years, and I figured I'll figure it out by year 3. So by the end of the second year, when I ran out of funds, I started flying to the Northwest Territories, to Yellowknife, which is not far from Alaska, to work up there. So I'll fly, I'd go to school, I'll see patients Monday to Friday night, hop on a plane, take an overnight, get there Saturday, work all day Saturday, Sunday, 10 hours each. I'll do that once every 3 weeks, and then fly back Sunday night to be at the university on Monday morning.
Wow.
So we needed the funds. I needed to live. And I figured, if you look at the silver lining, it gave me a little bit of clinical experience, because at the time, I started actually placing braces in areas where an orthodontist was not available in that community up there. But it's just, it really is a remote area. It's cold, it's far, and providing is appreciated. So that made it tough. Some of the other factors that seem trivial right now, but at the time, almost half of my teachers were younger than me, and it's kind of hard when you sort of do your work and you have to walk up to your teacher who's younger than me to show them what you've done, and then they have to correct you. And so, I'm willing to learn. There's nothing wrong with that, but it does bruise the ego a little bit. So it kind of collectively, all of it was a good experience. I would still go through it. I just didn't know how hard it would be, because 8 to 5, you have classes, you have patients, And then you go home to study, and then you have to work on your thesis. You have to work on your master's degree, right? So it was a lot more work than anticipated. But what kept me going at the time is my commitment to my family. You go home and you look at those kids and say, I just deprived them of a beautiful life, of a beautiful income, so I can do what I like, and I owe it to them to succeed. That was number one. And I promise you that was the main reason. The second one is my own determination. I really loved orthodontics. I knew when I started the program that this is a branch of dentistry that I enjoyed, that was not associated with pain and root canal and extraction and fillings and injections. It was more of a positive experience, not only to myself, but to the patient. It's associated with smiling, self-confidence, improving the face, improving the aesthetics, helping people chew their food a bit better. If they have joint problem, you're helping them. So everything about the specialty was positive, and that kept me going. And the deeper I got into the specialty, the more I liked it. So out of commitment to my family, out of commitment to myself, I was determined to not only finish, but do well as well. And that's what kept me going. But to tell you, there were days where there were dark nights where you stop and you question yourself. To me, that's not a failure. That's just, these are human traits. And if you don't go through them, then you're either lying to yourself or you're just not being honest with your environment. So there were tough days, but that's what helped me through it all at the end of the day.
How was your family life during those 3 years when you were at home? Were you able to spend much time with your children and your wife?
My family life suffered the least, but I tell you, I cut off all ties, not on purpose, but almost by obligation from friends, because you have no time, because school takes 80 to 90% of your awake time. The other 10% is the family. So that doesn't leave much time for anything else. I love golfing, for instance. I don't think I golfed once throughout the program for 3 years. You connect with friends, and when you do connect with friends, it's more of a short visit or what have you. So it was tough. But what I wanted to do is focus on whatever time sort of was left over from sort of school commitment. I dedicated that to family. So it was good. It was tough. We sort of live on a budget as well. So going out and traveling and sort of vacation time becomes, you put all of that on hold throughout the program. So you want to be careful with that.
So moving on to today, you kind of taken a slightly different role in your career. You are, from what I understand, you're speaking at a lot of these conferences and keynotes as a paid speaker, and you're educating other dentists and medical professionals. What is that like, and how today, as successful as you are, what keeps you motivated? What is it that lights a fire under you? Is it still your family, or is there a new goal, a new aspiration in life that you want to achieve?
Well, you sort of have, all of us at least should have sort of two sets of goals, personal and professional. Those two don't always intersect. They're never exclusively mutually exclusive, but you can sort of have two separate things. So my family still remains my life, and what happens is, as my kids are older too, two of my kids are in college now. One of them studying nursing, and the other one is studying business. It is in business school, in third year business school. So your interaction, your family life, it changes a little bit. It evolves. So my focus on my family will always be my focus on my family. These are, at a philosophical level, these are the people that I trust and I love unconditionally. And I know in return, they trust me and love me unconditionally. So nothing will ever come close to that. Maybe my relationship with my parents, but as you know, I lost both mom and dad a couple of years ago. So the only thing I have left are my children and my wife, and we have an amazing relationship. So that's good, and that will always, and that will evolve. But what keeps me going professionally is I love what I do. And I know it sounds like a cliche again, but at one point, as I became efficient at my job, at being an orthodontist, at treating patients with aligners, at some point you want to share that experience. And that's where sort of that sense of loyalty, of giving back to the specialty, giving back to orthodontics, giving back to dentistry comes in, and you say, well, now that I've acquired all this experience, and experience doesn't always mean success only, it also means failures, because along the way you fail and you learn as much from your failures as much as you do from your successes. So I have this wealth of knowledge, this wealth of information. And as I get close to retirement, you pause and you think, am I going to take it to the grave with me? And then you think there's no way as human beings, the only way we can evolve is if we learn from the generations before us. So what I decided to do is we need to share that information. I do get compensated. Truth be told, working in the office is a much better compensation than me standing on stage and sharing my experience. But that's where that bit of sort of internal obligation comes in, and you feel this obligation to share that wealth of knowledge so the next generation can learn, and then they can improve upon it and then pass it to the next generation, and so on and so forth. And that's the only way our specialty is going to grow and survive as a matter of fact. Now, there are some fringe benefits. I have been on 6 continents. There's only one continent I haven't been on, and all of that is just going out and lecturing, getting invitations from universities, from associations and what have you. You get to travel, you get to see the world. And I have been in a little over, I think, 100 countries worldwide almost. And I've spoken to about 200,000 doctors live and another 200,000 doctors worldwide via some form of digital platform. So you can imagine you land any city in the world almost, and there's someone somewhere that will know you, and I'll come up to you at one point, will either thank you for the knowledge that you pass along, or, very few times where someone literally comes up to you and says, you've changed my life, you've opened my eyes to this new technique that I was never open to, and I want to thank you for that. Nothing comes close to that. You can't put a dollar sign on that, and I truly and genuinely mean that. So there are other perks. You do get to meet all kind of nice people, people that struggle with the English language sometimes to try to convey a message. But as you know, French is my first language actually. So it's nice when you hear it in French, in English, in Italian, in Chinese, in Japanese, in any language, in Portuguese. So it is rewarding, and that's what sort of gives you that bit of extra call to keep going, to go further a little bit more. I do get compensated regardless of who pays my fees for that one event, which is nice. But you get to try new food, you get to try new cultures, you get to ask new questions, you get to meet new people. So that by itself, it has its own reward. So it's not all give, and it's not all take. And we have to have a balance of the two, because, and the other thing that most of us find a bit of a taboo to talk about, and that's completely separate from ego, is recognition. We all, at one form or another, appreciate recognition, right? And that recognition does, although it's not the main driving force, it is a nice sort of lubricant. It sort of makes the hard work a little bit easier to tolerate, and the all-night flights and going through security and all that pleasant stuff that you have to put yourself through, and eating hotel food and what have you. So it does make it a little bit better. But recognition is something as well that we don't like to talk about, but it does make the situation a little bit more palpable and pleasant.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. That's one thing that I strive for in life, is to be able to travel around the globe with my family someday. One of my aspirations. So that's amazing. Yeah, I feel that I feel like if you can give 3 bits of advice, because everybody, people who listen to this particular podcast, they're kind of walking various paths right now. You have some that are struggling, some that are finding their way, and some that are far above where they are, but maybe they have other elements of their life that are imbalanced. Maybe their family isn't great, but their business is great. Maybe their finances are terrible, but their relationships are amazing. What would be, maybe a couple things, 2 to 3 bits of, advice that you can give them that can help them along the way in life, whether they're struggling or they're not struggling? What are 3 key things that really helped take you to where you are today if you can simplify them. It doesn't have to be 3, just a couple things that you can simplify and put down.
Well, it's this basically. I will give you a few pearls, and I'll tell you, and I'll be speaking from the heart. They may jive with some people, and they may not. But it's funny if you think of our life, being teenagers, you try everything to fit with your environment, with your friends, with your family, with your siblings. You do everything right just so you can blend in, and we all do that. And it's human instinct almost. I don't want to be different. I don't want to be the guy in the corner. I don't want to be the person that people point at and sort of whisper. So you want to blend in, and that's what you do. And socially, as social animals, we try and do that growing up as our personality forms. But as we mature, as we become our own person, a lot of us continue with that sort of thread. Well, I want to fit in at work, at home, socially, professionally. I want to blend in, so I'll do what everybody else is doing, which is fine. And this is what average people do, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because there's a lot of happy people with what you and I consider average, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I hate to use the word normal. We'll use the word average because I think it's a little bit more accurate, and that's fine. But then there are some of us, and because we're all different, there are some of us that seek success differently. And aim for more for any reason, be it because they want to make a difference, because they want to satisfy a void in their life, whatever the case may be. I'm not going to get too philosophical, but those are the people that come in and sort of study the rules, understand the rules, societal rule, professional rules, whatever the case may be, and find the limits. They keep pushing until they find the limit. And then they go outside the limit without breaking the law, or they can break sometimes social norms. And it's okay to break social norms sometimes if you're not offensive to people around you. And that's what I did. I figured what the norm is. I figured what most people are doing, and I figured out what's natural and what's acceptable in society. And then you go, well, what happens if I push this one point? What if I take it outside the boundaries? What would happen? And those are the people that are going to go beyond what we consider average. And again, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but the ones that usually stand out or want to stand out are the ones that don't follow a societal norm or professional norms to the T. You follow most of them, but not all of them. As you know, I'm an orthodontist, but I also have other hobbies. Hobbies that pay me money as well. I have other businesses. I have almost half a dozen companies, either related to dentistry or otherwise, consulting firms, what have you. I own real estate as well. So I do other things, but it's always the same rule that I apply. And if somebody tells me this is the way it's done, I want to understand why it's done this way. And then I want to see how far I can push it outside the norm, so that if I want to do better than average, I have to think different than average. So it's okay to break those rules. Again, it's a delicate balance. You don't want to ever do anything unethical or illegal, but sometimes you can break societal rule without being unethical or illegal at all whatsoever. So just looking at it from a different point of view, with a fresh pair of eyes. So my advice is, before you break the rules or before you push the rules, figure out where the limits of the sandbox are, where you can play, and where the sandbox ends, and then come close to the edge and take a look. That would probably be the first advice. The second one is you have to be true to yourself. And it kind of indirectly relates to the first one. If you're worried about what people around you say, then you're not going to make it far. You want to stay true to yourself, but you make sure you have a clear vision of where you want to head. So have a nice, unblemished sense of ethics. That always helps. You say, you know what, my internal compass tells me what I'm doing is not wrong. I'm not causing any harm, but I'm trying a different way, different than everybody else, but something that does no harm to anyone. So stay true to yourself. And if you do get critiqued or criticized, take it with a grain of salt and learn from it. Every experience should be a learning experience, right? I'm not saying it doesn't hurt or it's not going to hurt, because the more you care about the people that criticize you, the more it's going to affect you, the more it's going to hurt you. Take it with pride and just move forward. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to give you a little example that's going to sound cold. When for instance, I'm purchasing a real estate, and I go to my lawyer and my accountant and I ask them advice. And because I've been working with them for a long time, they come and they'll give you advice and they'll give you the numbers that you want to do. But at the end of the day, their advice is not the decision. The decision is mine. And I even told my accountant one time, I said, if your business sense is as good as mine, you would have been way richer than me, right? So, and I don't mean it, and I didn't mean it as an insult. I've known my accountant for almost a decade and a half, and he understood exactly what I meant. So he's good with numbers. He's really good at doing this, and he based his experience based on what he's seen from other clients, not from personal experience. Whereas what I do is I gather information, I gather data, I put it all together, take some alone time and then make a decision. So yes, you do want to break the norms a little bit. You do want to take advice, listen to advice, take it from everywhere. But at the end of the day, you decide based on your experience. Some people call it gut feeling, whatever you want to call it. It's usually based on personal experience. A little bit of guts is needed. Sometimes a bit of luck may or may not help, but prepare for any eventuality and you'll be able to do it. So the second advice is stay true to yourself. And there's a French proverb that says you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs, right? So you do have to break some eggs sometimes to make an omelet, so long as whatever you're breaking is not the law or your sense of ethics. So these are probably the two things that you want to do, because again, if you keep doing the same thing you've always done, you're always going to get what you always got, right? Right. And so push it out a little bit. Look around you, see what you can learn. And probably the last advice I want to give you is take advice from anyone. Take advice. You can't, just because I'm an orthodontist, I'm not going to listen to another orthodontist only, or I'm going to listen to my lawyer or an accountant. Sometimes you find wisdom in the littlest things, in the places where you can't expect. Sitting on a plane, I don't want to call it eavesdropping, because we're all sitting on a plane, and you listen, and a little sentence or a little conversation will trigger something in your brain and say, you know what? I never thought of this way. And then you go in, and especially if it's a long 10, 12-hour flight, you sit back and you start thinking, you know what? I've never thought of it this way. This is almost taking an object and turning it on its head. Even though it's the same object, now you see something completely different. So do take advice. You don't have to follow everybody's advice, but do take advice from anyone and everyone. Just take it in, be thoughtful about it. You may not use it, but it may or may not come handy one day.
That kind of follows with the pursuit of Bruce Lee's famous quote, take what is useful and discard what is useless to you.
Perfect, exactly.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking 31 minutes out of your day. I know you still probably have some guests over. This was one of my favorite podcasts ever. I really, really appreciate it. It'll be live probably by tomorrow. So I'll send you the link, and this will be all over the place. And I'm sure the audience is going to be looking very much forward to this particular episode. So is there anything else you'd like to end with before we...
No, the one thing I wanna just maybe add that you may not have asked is, regardless of the profession that we do, regardless of your calling in life, success is a formula, and the formula is generic. It's not attached to a certain profession. So regardless of what it is, it takes discipline, and discipline may mean to one person something completely different than another. It may mean writing them down, maybe putting sticky notes in the bathroom mirror, for reading those every morning, reminding yourself. Whatever that discipline is, stick to it and stick to a routine. But once you reach your goal, move further, take it a step further. And if your goal is to get to point B, then once you get to point B, don't stagnate there. Then push it a little bit further and say, okay, now my next point is point C, and write a new plan and let your plan evolve with you. But don't forget to stay disciplined. Discipline doesn't mean you have to be miserable. It doesn't mean you have to not enjoy life. Not at all. Not at all. Have a plan and stick to it. Little exceptions to the rule sometimes are okay, because it does spice things up a little bit. But stick to your plan, and nothing is unachievable. I tell you, nothing is unachievable in this world.
That we can agree on 100%. Thank you so much for touching on those last points. That That was incredible. And I agree, because some people are more auditory, some people more prefer the written word, and their brains work differently. And so I agree with you that discipline is shared in a different light with everyone else. Everybody has a different way of being disciplined, and the routines and their habits and the mindset that they need in order to achieve those goals and tasks they're all fine. They all are great. They don't necessarily correlate with everybody else. We're all human, but we have different ways of, achieving things and doing things. So thank you, Amo. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. This has been fantastic. I will let you get back to your family, and hopefully I'll talk to you soon. I know you're going to be leaving here pretty soon, right? You're going to go back out of the country to another conference?
Yes, in a couple of weeks, actually. So I just want to enjoy time, just being in my own house for a while and being with the family, because I know it's going to be hectic travel schedule starting in a couple of weeks. So thank you for taking the time. I'm proud of you, buddy. Keep doing what you're doing. You're on the right path. This is your passion, and you're really good at it. Keep at it. I'm proud of you.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. Have a good night.
Have a nice evening. Cheers.